What's up, YouTube? This is J5. It's been another 70-degree day in the dead of winter up here in Massachusetts, Northeast. It's kind of weird. But, I've kind of been going crazy on the blade trade. I just got back into skating again, and I decided to get two new blades. The price was right, basically, for both of them. One for boot only for $50. Them 908s. And, this just came with the boot and the stock liners in great condition. It was used for a couple of sessions, had some grind marks on it, but otherwise almost like a brand new boot. And then also the Xsjados. Always wanted to skate these. These are original. I think these are V2 of the original, not the USD Xsjados with an S. This is the original Xsjados with an X. And so I put this actually came complete, $120 from the seller on Blade Trade, and I put my Solomons on here. I'm going to talk about the frames in a bit, but from previous purchase I had on the Solomons, I had extra. They sent extra UFS frames. They actually came with these the big frames from Ground Control on them, and I was skating both of these, and I skated the 908 second, so I put them on there. But yeah, let me talk about my first impressions of these. Here's the shoe, the foot wrap. So if you don't know, Xsjado is a snowboard binding engineered to be UFS compatible. Now, I mean, it's based off of a snow boot board binding. This is not an actual snow boot board boot binding, but very similar. And I can tell you right now, these skate a lot like K2s, soft boots. It makes sense. You have this wrap that's soft, and then you have this cuff here, which has padding. So you step into there, and you strap it all up, and it's pretty much like an integrated soft boot. There are some caveats of having separate pieces instead of the actual integration in there. You lose some of the power transfer from blades, and that always happens. I used to own a pair of Canon 80 ski boards, which are just short boards that are shaped like snowboards, which had experimental snowboard boot bindings on them, and they were so much fun to ride. They were so comfortable, but the problem with them is you lost a lot of power. In skiing, it's a bigger deal. You get tireder faster. But on here, it wasn't, when I was actually grinding and stuff, and I'm not like trying to push it on a long trip, a long skate, these worked great, actually. And actually, that's where these excel, is the grind. I mean, they have large area to grind on. Both the positive and negative. I don't do negative tricks, but maybe I'll start doing it with these. So let's just start off with the positives there. We've listed a couple of them. I mean, they're comfortable. You can step out of the boot, use this as a commuter. I wouldn't skate too long on these. There's a couple of reasons why. The first one I told you was the power transfer. The cuffs are loose. They use Velcro strapping. A lot of people replace this with regular straps. So the cuffs are very loose, actually. But I kind of like loose cuffs. We'll talk about on them 908s, which actually have very stiff cuffs, which I got used to also, so maybe I like them both. So at first, I had skated these normal, without grinding, and I didn't like them that much. It wasn't until I got to the grinding, and I felt like, a boot is a boot is a boot, really comes true if the boot's comfortable on your foot, and it's solid and stable, you're going to be able to do whatever tricks you got to do. There may take a little bit of learning curve for each of them, but I have to say this actually grinded better than the 908s a little bit, just because of the bigger soles. I just locked on better. Also, I was using anti-rocker on these, and it's a shorter frame, so I wasn't getting hung up trying to get around. But I felt like I could twist my foot around a little more, tweak it a little more. It was just very nice. But but it does still feel like you're skating on a platform and not skating in an integrated boot. So that brings us to sort of the negatives of this. Even though this is kind of cool that you can take out the shoe and everything, it's actually very complicated to put on and take off. And in the time I do that, I know I'll get better at it, but in the time I do that, I could slip this out. I could slip off a regular pair of blades and slip on my shoes and then pack up my regular blades onto a backpack and be on my way. And then vice versa, just swap in and just slip into the boots really quickly. With these, you really the rubber soles are really grippy in here, so you have to really get them into there and then knock them down in the heel. And then you have to strap the toe in, then you have to strap the top place, the actual buckle in, and then the top buckles you have to tighten. So there's a lot of movements where in the regular boot I just have to tie and buckle, and that's it. Also tying these shoes, you got to tie them really tight to prevent heel raise. Now the shoe itself has a little rubber piece that prevents heel raise of the shoe, so this locks in really nicely. But if you don't get a good tie on that shoe, heel raise is a problem in these boots. The other big problem is this buckle. It goes all the way down to your flex point of your foot, and it's just canvas here. So when you flex forward, it pushes down and cuts off circulation to your foot. And it's one of my pet peeves of boots of all different kinds when they have pressure points like that. It makes it less enjoyable. I'm sure it'll break in a little, get a little used to it. It's not a huge deal, but yeah, definitely would have liked to see something to make it so that when you lean forward, this did not dig into your boot. All right, enough on that. Let's talk about the 908s. Now these, I have to say, are my sort of go-to favorite now boots in terms of comfort. Just slipping them on for the first time, while the cuff is a little stiffer and a little more bulky than I'm used to. It wraps above the ankle. I kind of like it. I'm looking at the 909s. They have adjustable cuff where you can do the low cuff if you want, and that might be better for me in general. But if I'm skating park and I want to do sort of a little vert or something like that, these really hold your ankles stable. And, you know, at first I thought it was going to be an impediment to grinding. It was not so bad. I haven't really been doing my, boot down royales now, and especially with these, it's really hard to do. You have a smaller sole on these, which I'm used to with the Solomons. And so your angle on this big frame, ground control big frame, is not the greatest. So I'll probably put smaller frames on this. I might swap in the Solomon frames because I really liked how those slide, or my 50/50 frames. What can I say about this? Little history. These are the old Sabotage boots, recreational boots. Now most boots are actually that are not like the soft boot K2s or the Solomons that were made by big companies from their own molds. Most boots come up from the TRS Lightnings from Rollerblade, the mold from there. So a lot of the classic fits are there. They're very narrow in the down at the arches. This is a completely, there's a rec mold. I think the Sabotages were also aggressive skates at some point. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. But I have to admit, when I first heard about that, I was like, oh, these are going to be cheesy. I didn't like the way the eyelets looked. It's going to be flimsy or whatever. And I have to say, I was totally wrong. These things are solid. The sole plate on these are great. These eyelets, these are really functional. And they work sort of like the Solomon locking lacing without having the locking. You don't really need the locking. It's nice to have. But when you crank down on these laces, they don't move as you're tying them. And it really feels like you have a 45-degree strap, like right up here is the 45-degree sort of lacing system right there. And then down here really forms to your foot. It's a little wider in the arches, which is great for me. Some people may feel they have a little more room, but I think this actually fits a lot of skaters really well. My biggest, I wouldn't say complaint, but the toe box is a little bigger for me. I've heard other people say it's too small for them. I also like the Remedies. Toe box is pretty cramped, but it fits my toes exactly perfectly. The big thing with having too much room in here, I tend to curl my toes when I'm doing a trick, and puts tension and can cause sort of, like stress on my muscles where I get cramps or whatnot. But there's not much pressure points on here. I did find one. The first time skating, I didn't feel anything, but there was one in the tongue on my right boot. That just sort of hit my ankle and rubbed up against my ankle. And it didn't hurt the first session. Then I went out today, and that part of the ankle is super sensitive because it was rubbed up against yesterday. And so it did cause a pressure point. It did not feel great, but still skatable. I don't think there's any boots that are always going to be perfect. I think you need to break them in. Some people may have found some boot liners, a combination that just fits them, and they've ridden those forever, and so feels great for them. But otherwise, I've not felt this good in a pair of blades since my Solomons. And even the new Solomons I got, I feel that the arches are too narrow. So a little history. Give you a little history on the Sabotage boot. So the 909s that are coming out, they basically took this boot sort of mold and then as a basis and designed a whole new boot. So I'm really excited about that one. They fixed some of the issues some people have had where they say these things get too flexy and they start to get loose. So they've joined them with more plastic, but they still have the same functionality where they get cranked down onto your foot. So I'm super excited about that. The other negatives are basically smaller sole area. I felt like I was locking on much better with the just slightly better really, with the Xsjados. But in terms of feel of grinding, these just felt like classic boots, like really fun. You felt like you were attached to the grind as you were grinding it, not as if you were just sort of sliding across the surface. I kind of like that better. So these are probably going to be my main go-to boots until the 909s come out, and then I'll decide if I want to drop $300 on another pair of skates without even frames. I would get the Intuitions with those just because I already have these liners, and I would like to try out the Intuition liners. The great thing now that I've discovered Blade Trade is that if I don't like something, I could always sell it to someone and get some of my money back. And then if there's something that comes up, I can buy it at a discount, and if I don't like those, again, sell it back. So it's a great sort of, these boots usually have really long life to them unless you really destroy them. So it's a great way to sort of continue the community. People will sell their old boots and then go buy new boots, so they're still supporting the companies that are making boots. And people like me will, buy boots to try them out because there's not many places I can try out all these different types of boots. Although I did discover Thorough Skate Shop in Boston. Shout out to them. They're great. They hooked me up with a bunch of pads and wax and bearings and wheels today. So grateful to have a skate shop that actually does inline skating, accessories and parts and things like that, and boots. So I would probably be going there to buy more often, just to buy local. But other than that, you can just go and try out different boots. Spend 50. I say the range of sort of like the regular tier boots, not the ones that are super fancy, with fancy skins and everything. Regular tier boots range anywhere. You can buy them from $50 to $150, $160. Usually when you get to the higher ranges, they come up with complete setups with wheels, bearings, and frames. Usually the wheels are actually pretty good. The bearings, I went out and bought new bearings. I don't have them in there. Skate's fine with these bearings in them, but I can hear they're on the end of their life, and I'm just going to change them out and throw out those bearings. But otherwise, on the frames, again, I'm saying the big blocks are much better than just skating flat on a regular frame. But I'm coming to the conclusion that I do like the lower frames with the with sort of some type of anti-rockering system. So my 50/50s, I'll probably switch out the flat system to with the juice blocks. They're designed to skate that way. These, I have my old Higgs Bostons, and the bearings are shot in these, and so they hardly move. This one doesn't move, this one does, but it doesn't matter because these are anti-rockers. I'm not going to be doing stairs with them. This really slid really well. I really like I really like the Solomon skates. It might just be familiarity from skating them so much. The Solomon frames. The 50/50s are very similar. The nice thing about the 50/50s is you can swap them. You can just turn them around when you wear it one side. These you can't. They actually have a back and a front. You probably could, but it would skate weird. Anyway, that's my review of both the Thems 908 and the Xsjados V2, I think. They're awesome skates, both of them, and I'm going to continue on with the Thems because they're producing more of those. They're fairly inexpensive with the Them 908s. They're going to get more expensive because they made their own molds with the 909s. But I like to support John Julio, and finding a boot that just fits you so well is, you just want to continue supporting that company so they keep making them. So I can get newer ones, new colors. We'll see. We'll see how far I go down the rabbit hole. But I don't think you can go wrong with any skate as long as it fits you and feels good. Don't look at someone else's skate and say, fancy skate, and say, I really want those. Again, a lot of them are the same shells and they just have flourishes on them. Some are made out of different materials, stiffer materials like carbon. I will try those out at some point. But if you're at that point buying carbon skates, you can buy a whole line of skates. You probably have the money to buy a whole line of skates and again, and skate anything you want. But if you're like on a budget, 908s are great, or Blade Trade. All right, thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.